Hey everyone, today we're going to do a little brief introduction to thermodynamics. So, thermodynamics, you gotta just review some key terms here. Remember, heat is energy that's being transferred from one object to another. It is important to know how heat flows. It always goes from the hotter, warmer item to the cooler item. Okay? You're going to practice this in tomorrow's worksheet. Temperature is a measure of the amount of energy an object or substance has. It's also the average kinetic energy. So, remember that energy can be released or absorbed. Endothermic describes a process where heat is being absorbed from the environment. One way to remember this is you can say heat enters, right? En for endo, heat enters. For exothermic, that's when heat is being released into the environment. And to remember that, we can say heat exits. So in this example, Cyclops shooting a optic blast. What do you think? Is that endothermic or exothermic? All right, enthalpy is the heat content of a substance. So we can measure how enthalpy, or the heat of a reaction, changes. Okay, so that's delta H is going to be the heat of our reaction, and that's the heat of our products minus the heat of our reactants. We'll get back to this word enthalpy next week, but all you really need to know is enthalpy basically means heat. Right, that's energy. All right, so this is to visualize endothermic and exothermic processes. In the endothermic process, heat is being absorbed. So if we're measuring energy, right, we end up with more energy than what we started with. So the delta H is positive, okay? Again, we'll talk more about this next week, but when you have an increase in energy, you have a positive delta H, or an endothermic reaction, right? Energy is being absorbed, so we end up with more than we started with. The exothermic reaction is the opposite. Heat is being released. So the change in energy is going to be negative. Right? We have a negative delta H, which means that we started with a certain amount of energy, but we lost some of that energy. And so our final product has less energy than what we started with. Okay? And that would be an exothermic process. So, first law of thermodynamics tells us energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be changed from one form to another. Energy is often transferred. So, one way to keep track of energy being transferred is to think of a system, everything we're kind of focusing on, and the surroundings, everything outside of that system. So to illustrate this, we're going to look at a campfire. Okay, so I'm going to label this system here. Let's use a different color. Maybe blue. Okay, the campfire is going to be our system. So what do you think? What is part of our surroundings here? Okay, so now that you've seen what is part of our surroundings, before we answer is this exo or endothermic, how does the energy flow? So from what object to which object would the energy flow to and from? Okay, if it's flowing from the campfire to the various surroundings, is that going to be exothermic or endothermic? What do you think? So the campfire, if we're focusing on that, it is releasing energy into the environment. So what kind of reaction would this be? All right, we'll review this and talk about this more tomorrow.